Hello, welcome back. So glad you are tuning in to another podcast out of Second Peter. Yeah, tonight we start a podcast in Second Peter, having finished First Peter. I trust you're having a great day. Second Peter chapter 1 verse 1 reads, Simon Peter, a servant and apostle of Jesus Christ, to those through the righteousness of our God and Savior Jesus Christ have received a faith as precious as ours. That's 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 1. You will remember that on the day of Pentecost in 33 AD, the apostle Peter preached to Jews who had come to Jerusalem from all over the known world at that time. That day, as a result of thousands coming to faith in Jesus Christ, many of these people returned to their homes to start churches in their cities. Many of them went back to what we know today as modern-day Turkey. It was to these people that Peter wrote. Somewhere around 63 or 64 AD, Peter visited Paul, who was then a political prisoner in Rome, shortly before the great fire which destroyed the city in 64 AD. To be specific, it was July 19th. Peter wrote his first epistle to these churches in Asia Minor, warning them of the persecution that they would suffer under the Emperor Nero. A year later, Peter himself became a political prisoner in Rome. During his imprisonment, the apostle penned his second letter to these very same Christians who at that time lived in what we know as modern-day Turkey today. This time, in 2 Peter, the apostle did not refer to suffering. He now is addressing a different problem, a problem that arose from within their own churches. In 2 Peter, we discover three divisions. Number 1, remain faithful and grow spiritually. 2, be aware of false teachers. And 3, be aware of the second coming of Christ and those who would deny that future event would take place. In 1 Peter, the former Galilean fisherman used the name Jesus gave him, Peter, which meant rock, to introduce himself. This time, sitting in prison in Rome, he wrote his second epistle. The apostle in this second epistle is looking back on his life, remembering who he was before he met Jesus. Back then, he was called Simon, which means weak or reed. It's interesting, the older we get, the closer we get in our walk with the Lord, the more we recognize how puny we truly are. Perhaps that's why Simon refers to himself as such. In 2 Peter, Peter describes himself as a bondservant. Doulos is the word he uses. It's the lowest possible word he could use of himself as a servant. This word has the idea of one whose will is being swallowed up in the will of another. Peter describes the recipients of this second letter as those who through the righteousness of our God and Savior, Jesus Christ, have received a faith as precious as ours. What's interesting is these Christians to whom he's writing are second generation Christians who had never seen Jesus as Peter did, yet they had placed their faith in Jesus as God incarnate, the Savior of the world. Peter continues, those who have received a faith of the same kind as ours, another translation puts it. Peter adds that they received this by faith, or they received this faith by the righteousness of our God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Think through that one. Our faith, the faith that we exercise in Jesus, is a product of His righteousness. Another way to translate that word righteousness is faithfulness. These Christians did not come to know Jesus because of their good works or their own ingenuity or a result of having a great education. They had the same faith as Peter and his companions, and that faith came by the righteousness or the faithfulness of God himself. While on the cross, Jesus experienced the wrath of God for the sins of the whole world. The result of his sacrifice was that he satisfied the righteous demands of God. And as a result of trusting in his finished work on that cross, all who place their faith in him as Lord and Savior are made righteous in the sight of God. It's as if God looks at us through the lens of his Son, and he sees us, but he sees the righteousness, the perfection of his Son applied to us. Why? Because he promised such. He said that if we believe with our heart and confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord, that Jesus overcame sin and death on that cross, and through his resurrection, we shall be saved in Romans chapter 10. So today we've got to be careful to live out of the perfection that Jesus earned for us. We do not earn our own perfection because Jesus has done that. And so today we don't earn God's favor. We don't maintain it. We live out of it. And that's what we're going to talk about as we work through the book of 2 Peter. I hope you're as excited as I am. And I trust you have a great day. If you have any questions about the faith or anything we talk about, you can shoot me an email at beyoungministry@gmail.com. And I'd be glad to hear from you and answer any questions you might have. Hey, have a great day.